Next up is the wonderful Sigourney Weaver. We're now joined by the director, James Cameron. Would you please welcome Zoe Saldana. And now please give it up for Sam Worthington. And last but by no means least, the producer John Landau. Thanks guys, and welcome to London. I'm going to throw this open very quickly, but I will just have one question to Jim, because I've spoken to him a couple of times. Jim, it's finally out there. How do you feel?
So relieved that you know, we can hold our head high that we got the picture done on time by the skin of our teeth, and you know, it's been a 4.5-year process. So you know, tonight we'll pull the cover back and show the world, so to speak, here in London. You know, and I think it's fun that we've chosen London to do this world premiere, and it's just really just a huge relief to actually let people see it, quit talking about it. You know, there's been a huge buzz around this thing, and so now it's just to get the rumors, you know, put to bed by actually dealing with the movie itself.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to throw it right open. I'm going to go to Anwar first of all.
A question for Sigourney and Sam. Sigourney and Sam, particularly seeing the Avatar versions of yourself in the film, how was that? And Zoe seeing the Navi version of yourself. How was it to see maybe your facial characteristics reflected in?
It blew my mind. It was just, there were moments in which sometimes Jim would always incorporate us in the process of the results that he would get from Weta and all the other companies that he was working with. And we couldn't find words to express how it made us feel. It was something so new. They're so beautiful, and it looked so much like us. It was kind of unimaginable.
You know, we all had renderings of our avatars when we were doing our performance capture, and for me, Grace had such a haunting face, and I think because her human life is so guarded and armored, and the rendering was a real inspiration to me. So I was very surprised when I finally saw the movie and saw that he hadn't done it like the rendering, but Grace looked just like Sigourney, only I was 10 foot tall and blue, which is a much improved version of myself, 30 years younger, and you know, leap tall buildings at a single bound. So it was wonderful having a double life as a character and seeing it realized so magnificently by Jim and Weta.
My biggest fear was always I tried to be a very subtle actor, and I was worried and panicked that the nuance of the performance wouldn't translate once it goes through all the bits and bytes of the computer. I believe, hopefully, successfully, you can judge better than I can, but from my opinion, that is 100% my performance. And every glimmer in my eye, every smirk, every goofy walk, that has encapsulated my spirit. And hopefully you sit there and watch the film, but after 20, 30 minutes, you're not seeing big blue people, you're seeing the spirit of us.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to my colleague on the front row here.
Question for Jim and follow this again. Was it always in your mind to reunite with Sigourney after Aliens all the years ago? Sigourney, what was your reaction to the concept, the special effects, and reuniting with Jim?
Well, interestingly, Sigourney and I had become good friends after, you know, on Aliens, and carried that throughout. Since then, I even presented her with her star on the Walk of Fame and so on.
And I get to present him with his next week.
It wasn't meant as a segue, right? You know, but I hadn't necessarily written Grace for Sigourney when I first conceived the script in '95. But as we got to the casting process, it just suddenly struck me that she would be perfect, and I could prove that I hadn't thought of her because then the name of the character was Grace Shipley. And when Sigourney and I started talking about her doing the part, we said, well, I think we better change the name. What do you think? So we changed it to Grace Augustine. But once it popped into my head that Sigourney would be perfect for it, then you suddenly have this moment where in sending the script, you just hope and pray that the actor is going to respond to it. And Sigourney responded to the script immediately and really quite effusively, not just to her character, but to the intentions of the film overall, and signed up, pretty much right away.
Yes, I mean, we had stayed in touch, and I, was always a great admirer of the challenges that Jim took on, but I have to say I was absolutely thrilled when Jim called, and really very sweetly, because even though he's so capable, he's actually a very humble person. He said very sweetly, would you mind taking a look at this? I've been working on this, I'd love you to take a look at it. It was so sweet. And so I spent the next 3 days reading the script, which I have to say it was so ambitious on every level, and I'd get to these parts where I'd think, well, gosh, that's so amazing to write on that banshee, but I just don't see how you can do it. But I certainly wanted to be part of the adventure of going for it, and I always know with Jim, you're never in better hands. There's no one who's going to fight harder and stay longer and work harder to give the audience a hell of an experience. And also the part of Grace, the part of this, this woman who is sort of a dichotomy between this very driven, dry, frustrated woman in the human world and this free spirit who's lost her heart to the Na'vi people. The combination of all of these factors just made me jump at the chance to go on this adventure with Jim.
Thank you. We're going to go to the second row there.
Hello, sorry, question for James. I wondered how taking the technology so far forward fitted in with your message of connecting with the environment, and how you connected with your cast when you're directing them in virtual reality.
Actually, the interesting thing about working in the performance capture is that it's probably the best director-actor relationship and working process that I've ever been involved in. Because normally on a photographic set, and we shot for 4 months photographically in Wellington, and you can see that there were parts of the film were done that way, parts of it were done virtually. But in the virtual working process, I'm not distracted by the lighting and the time of day, and is the sun setting, and do I have to get the shot by 6:15, and where's the dolly track going to go, and 1,000 questions that pull the director's mind away from the process of working with the actors. We're really just there to do the acting. Obviously I don't act, but they're there to act, and I'm there to work with them to try to get the best possible performances. So we spend all our time really just looking for some moment of truth, emotional truth, or the truth of the character. And then, we'll go over and we'll huddle around the high-def playback, and so, we can look at their faces. I won't see them as their Na'vi or their Avatar characters for months, even years sometimes after they're originally captured, because the process takes so long. But as long as I know in that moment that we've gotten it, then I don't have to worry about it downstream. It's going to be a long, very patient process to get to the end. But what we get to at the end with is exactly what we started out from in that moment. So we I think wisely didn't make the assumption that we could modify it or change it or improve it later. We fought hard in the moment to get exactly what we wanted to say. And Sam, no one's harder on Sam or Sigourney or Zoe than themselves. And Slang's the same way, although he wasn't involved as much in the virtual process. So I found a really stimulating process, and I think we all bonded around kind of the making of this film and an attempt to strive for excellence in the performances.
Thank you. We're going to go to the front row. The microphone is just for you in a second.
This is a question for James. The Pandora has very much the look of the ocean about it, and I just wonder how much your vision for this film had been influenced by your own aquatic explorations. I also wondered what your feelings were about the death of Carl Spencer, who I believe that you saw the Titanic with.
I'm sorry, the last part again, just the
the dive of Carl Spencer.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered whether you had any comment about that, because
Sure.
he was local to us.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Let me just mention Carl. Okay, well, in terms of design, you know, I've just swept in every design influence I've had in my life, and I have a great, you know. Yeah, they're here. I've always had this deep respect for nature, and a lot of my youth was spent out in the woods, hiking around, and being a total science geek and collecting samples and looking at them under the microscope and that sort of thing. But then as an adult, you know, I've spent over 2,500 hours underwater, a lot of that, probably 500 hours in submersibles, and I've seen things that are absolutely astonishing. The bottom of the ocean, which really is like an alien planet, and that's been something that I always feel has been a gift in my life, to be able to live out a science fiction, fantasy, adventure for real in the diving work, which is something I get to do, you know, as an art form, as a filmmaker, but for real on those you know, deep ocean expeditions. So yes, there's a lot of you know, the deep ocean, even the shallow ocean, as a guide and inspiration for the creatures, and sometimes even just things like the textures. The banshee wings are based on the coloration of a tropical fish, for example, and Brazilian tree frogs and things like that, and small creatures like nudibranchs that have all these bright colors. You know, we were a little concerned that these large creatures might not scale properly, or they might not look real with these incredibly vivid color palettes, but we managed to make that work. It's something that we fought hard to do. And just to the last point, you know, Carl was a friend. We had planned a number of things to do together, including some additional diving at the Britannic, where we were going to put together some of the robotics and some of the subs and the things that I had with the deep technical diving that he did. And of course, you know, his tragic death at the Britannic last year was, you know, something that rocked the whole technical diving community, because he was such a great guy. And of course, you know, whenever something like that happens, and it does happen periodically when people are pushing the envelope and going beyond, you know, kind of stepping out to the extreme edge of human experience, you know, we mourn. And we go on, because we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep exploring. We're not going to pull back just because it's risky. Carl was not somebody who took risks, you know, or at least he took risks, you know, understanding it. So thanks for mentioning that. I appreciate that.
Thank you. We're going to go to my colleague on the...
Hi, Ben Hoyle from The Times. It's a question for James. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about the politics of the film. The characters talk about martyrdom, about shock and awe, about terror. The collapse of the tree and the ash evokes ground zero after 9/11, and I'm particularly interested in the heroes seem not to be the ones with huge mechanized military force on their side. Could you tell us a bit about the message you're projecting there, what's going on?
Well, I think that, you know, obviously there's a connection to recent events, and there's a conscious attempt to evoke even Vietnam era imagery with the way the guys jump off the helicopters and so on. It's a way of connecting a thread through history. I take that thread farther back, because I actually like to have a little bit of a historical memory that goes back farther than that to you know, the 17th, 16th centuries, and how the Europeans sort of pretty much took over South Central and North America and displaced and marginalized the indigenous peoples there. And I think that there's just this long and kind of wonderful history of the human race written in blood, going back as far as we can remember, Roman Empire and even farther back than that, where we have this tendency to kind of just take what we want without asking, as Jake says. And you know, I think, you know, I see that as a broader metaphor, not so intensely politicized as some people would make it, but broader in the sense that that's how we treat the natural world. As well. There's a sense of entitlement. You know, we're here, we're big, we've got the guns, we've got the technology, we've got the brains, we therefore are entitled to every damn thing on this planet, and that's not how it works. And we're going to find out the hard way if we don't kind of wise up and start seeking a life that's in balance with the natural cycles of life on Earth. And this is the challenges before us. And I think that, you know, certainly the film has this kind of, espouses this kind of love-hate relationship with technology. Obviously we use technology to tell a story that's a celebration of nature, which is an irony in and of itself. But I think that, you know, it's not that technology's bad, it's not that the technological civilization is bad, it's that we need to be in control of our technical process. We're not going to be able to just rip our clothes off and run back into the wilderness. First of all, there's not a whole lot of it left. Secondly, that's not going to work for, you know, 8 billion people. So we're going to have to think our way out of this, and we're going to have to do it using technology and using science, but we're also going to have to be, you know, very, very human about it and get in touch with our emotions and with our understanding of each other. You know, one of the themes of the film is, I think, symbolized by the fact that it begins and ends with the main character's eyes opening. It's about a change of perception and about choices that are made once our perceptions change.
Stephen Lang, you play one of these characters in these technical, big, armored suits. Maybe just enlighten us a little bit how you approach the character.
Well, just to pick up on a point that Jim is making in terms of a historical perspective on the film, of course the denouement for my character is at the end when Jake and I finally have a face-off, man to Navi, I suppose. And I think that one-to-one combat is the thing, it's finally a return to the rules of engagement that Quaritch really seeks. In fact, it's not, and in a sense, we're both armored at that point. He is 10 foot tall and has tremendous physical capabilities. I'm just a man, but I have my amp suit there. So I think it's almost an equal match in a way.
Thank you. We'll go to the left there, chap on the left. I have a question for Sigourney Weaver. Thank you. I suppose in common with your director on this film, you've got experience of working on the Alien films maybe more than 20 years ago. How would you contrast between the working practices on something like Aliens with how Mr. Cameron was working on this film with the new technologies? And how do you think that's going to impact people in your craft going forward?
Well, I think there have been several revolutions. I think this one leading us to Avatar is the biggest. When I did the first Alien here at Shepperton, we had this awesome special effects crew who, with literally a few hoses and things like that, made those special effects. We had no green screen or anything. On Aliens, we did use green screen. I think green screen is harder for actors, sure for directors, but in Avatar, in fact, when we were in our little suits with our ears and our tails on this empty volume, we could see the world in Jim's magic camera. I don't know what he calls it, but I call it the magic camera. We could see what we looked like in this landscape, but we were completely free to just be with each other as actors, with each other as characters, and as Jim said, his focus was on us. I think green screen and some of the intermediate things between just men thinking up clever things, and now, I think the green screen was most awkward, and I have to say as an audience member, I found it the most, I was uncomfortable. I always thought they put the characters too close together, or there's just unbelievable to me, and I'm so grateful as an audience member and as an actor now that we have a new technology where we can get to the heart, the essence of the moment and of the scenes, and then leave it up to the geniuses at Weta to spend 50 hours per frame building on our true, I have an acting teacher a long time ago who said, as long as you have it inside you, it's going to work. You don't have to show anything. Well, we had it inside of us, and Weta just let that lead them. They don't show it, they just bring it out into 3D, and as an actor, am very grateful.
Thank you. The chap in the third row on the right there.
I'd just like to ask about, James, about 3D really. There's a lot of big claims are made about 3D. It's as big as the talkies, Technicolor. I mean, how important do you think it is, and how sort of industry changing is your movement?
Well, I think we'll see. You know, I think we'll see Avatar's ultimate role, you know, little or large, in the sort of 3D revolution that's already in progress and has been put in progress by a number of other films, going back even to let's say Polar Express, which was also a performance capture film, but also was one of the first films that really demonstrated that 3D could be very, very profitable, and then followed by Chicken Little and on through a number of releases up through just in the last year, you know, Up and Monsters vs. Aliens and Fox's own Ice Age 3D, all of which showed an enhanced profitability in the 3D that outstripped the additional costs of the 3D. So all of a sudden, the studios are looking at this as a source of additional revenue. The theatrical exhibition community is looking at it as a way to bring people back to the cinema, to make the cinema exciting again. You know, during an economic downturn, of course, cinema has done very well compared to most businesses lately, so that's a good thing in and of itself. But of course, there's an erosion of revenues because of you know, piracy, all of these things, which is being kind of, and the DVD business kind of tapering down. This has so far been more or less balanced by the increase in international markets like Russia and China coming up and India coming up. So it's been balanced so far, but we need something that maybe sort of kickstarts public enthusiasm for the cinema as an experience, as people seem to be going down to smaller and smaller devices and watching movies on iPhones. We need to do something to reverse that trend, or at least to balance it. So I've sort of set as my goal making the movie theater back to the kind of, you know, sacred experience that it's always been for me my whole life, and the 3D is a part of that. I mean, it has to be used in balance with all of the other techniques of film as well. And I would say that, you know, if one were to see Avatar not in 3D, it would still be beautifully acted, beautifully designed, beautifully photographed, etc., etc. You know, it's not like you're suddenly left with 50% of the experience. But if you do want to see it with that sort of extra turbocharger of experience, and you want to pay a little extra to do so, 3D is the way to go.
Zoe, I wonder, is it hard when you're making a film like this to visualise, to keep up with Jim's vision?
I mean, I can imagine just what Sigourney said, that when you shoot a green screen or something, I could imagine that it would be hard if you didn't have enough reference pictures and footage and everything. We went to Hawaii for 4 days before we started shooting this movie. We wore very little dental floss kind of costumes, and we were jumping up and down the rainforest in Hawaii for 4 days, getting our feet wet, knowing what it was like to walk on that kind of ground, and to how the sun was cast on the trees and the leaves, and cooking fish on the ground. And by the time we came back, because I think Jim knew that he was hiring people that needed to make everything out of thin air, the least he could have done was take us to experiences and answer every question. There was no such thing as a stupid question, as a redundant question. There was always research. Let's go online, let's look at this picture, let's look this footage up again. And anything that we needed, so that by the time he would say action, we were there and this world was real. So much so that everybody around us was seeing it as well. So it just brought it back to a childlike form of role playing, which in reality I almost feel like that's what an actor does. You lose your innocence to try to gain it back, and it's never going to be better as it was when you were 5 years old playing with your toys. So the only thing we can do is try to.
Sam, you told a story about Hawaii with some people seeing you out in the rainforest.
Yeah, as Zoe said, we were wearing nothing but a lace G-string, a couple of gears, and a tail.
And a wig.
And a weird wig. And I thought Hawaii was going to be a holiday, to be honest. I thought I could take a surfboard and go surfing, but you know, we get there, we work hard, and then this guy comes past and goes, "Mate, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're making a movie." This is a big budget movie. He goes, who's the director? I said, "That bloke over there." And there's Jim with a handy cam. And he goes, "Is that James Cameron?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Fuck, he's gone downhill since fucking Titanic." And hence began Avatar.
Okay, that's a whole one to follow. The final question goes to young lady there.
I guess it's kind of a fitting one, actually. When you first came in, Jim, you said that you were relieved you finally get to show everyone. Is there going to be an Avatar 2, maybe 3? I read something about a trilogy idea.
Well, I always said during the making of the film that I dreaded the movie making money because we'd have to do it all again. But in fact, you know, when I pitched it to Fox, I said, look, we're going to spend a lot of money creating all these assets, we call them assets, all these CG mountains and plants and trees and leaves and flowers and bugs and creatures. I mean, you know, everything that you saw up there on the screen had to be made by people at workstations over a period of years. And so they have value. And so in terms of the pitch was, look, you know, I'm going to spend more money on the first one, but on the second one we'll be able to amortize that, focus on the story and all that, and they bought that. So now I feel like I have to make a second one now, you know. But of course that'll only happen if we make some money with the first one. So we'll see. It's still throwing the dice at this point. I have a story worked out for the second film and the third film, but my lips are sealed.
And on that note, I'd like to thank you all very much indeed. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!